The message lit up her tablet screen like a radioactive warning. Just 5 words, but they shattered my world. He's out again. Come over. I stood motionless in our bedroom, my half-packed suitcase lying forgotten on the bed, my eyes locked on her unlocked device as if it had spoken the words out loud. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom, steam escaping beneath the door. Inside, Candace was humming, carefree, clueless that her carefully hidden reality was seconds away from collapse. My hand shook as I scrolled upward, uncovering not just a single betrayal, but a digital vault of infidelity. Messages from countless men, app notifications, emails, photos I'll never forget. Evidence of deception carefully coordinated around every one of my business trips. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being ridiculed, calculatedly and continuously. Darren. Her voice called from the bathroom. Can you grab my lotion from the nightstand? I set the tablet back exactly where it had been and picked up her overpriced French cream. Coming, I replied, my voice eerily calm despite the rage now boiling under my skin. When I handed her the bottle through the slightly open door, she didn't even look at me. 12 years of marriage, and not a glance. Thanks, she mumbled. What time's your flight tomorrow? 7 a.m., I said, watching the water droplets slide down her shoulders. I'll be gone about 4 days. She smiled, the kind of smile I now recognized not as affection, but as relief. Perfect, she said lightly. I've got plans with the girls anyway. I nodded and gently closed the door behind me. The girls. Right. That night, as she peacefully slept beside me, I made up my mind. Candace Matthews would never get the chance to make a fool of me again. My name is Darren Matthews. I'm 38, and I work as a business development exec for a medical tech firm. It's not glamorous. There's no spotlight. Just dependable, behind-the-scenes work that keeps things running. I spend most of my time traveling across the country, closing deals, managing client relationships, shaking hands, explaining devices over dinners, and crashing in hotel rooms more often than in my own bed. I met Candace when we were both 26. She was sharp, radiant, ambitious, working in PR and climbing the corporate ladder with an effortless drive that turned heads. I was hooked instantly. We tied the knot within a year. For a while, everything looked like a dream. We bought a decent home in a quiet neighborhood, saved diligently, and built what I thought was a real partnership. We both agreed to postpone having kids until we'd made our careers more stable. So I pushed harder. Longer hours, more flights, more responsibility. I did my part. She did hers, decorating our home beautifully, hosting dinners for her colleagues, keeping up appearances. We looked like success, like a team. But something shifted around our 7th year together. The warm goodbye kisses turned robotic. Her excitement when I came home faded into indifference. When I called from trips, she rushed off the phone. I blamed myself at first. Maybe I'd become distant, too caught up in work. So I adjusted. I brought her thoughtful gifts from my travels, planned weekend getaways, gave her my full attention when she shared stories about her day. Still nothing changed. If anything, she grew colder. Then came the subtle cruelty. The sighs when I mentioned upcoming trips. The rolled eyes when I talked about my work. The way she'd interrupt me mid-conversation in front of her friends. Darren just got back from Cincinnati, she'd say with an exasperated smirk. Another one of his legendary sales trips, peddling medical widgets, or whatever, right, honey? They'd laugh. I'd smile. I always smiled, even when it stung. But I didn't stop trying. I believed marriage meant showing up even during the tough seasons. I stayed on top of everything: life insurance, retirement, investments, a better mortgage. I ensured her car was always serviced. I was dependable, consistent. And in return, I got to be the punchline in her social life. The predictable guy in a budget suit flying off to pointless meetings. Still, I never suspected she was cheating, not until that message appeared on her screen. Not until I saw 12 years of loyalty reduced to a digital nightmare. The next morning, I called work and claimed food poisoning. Then I canceled my flight, making sure the airline wouldn't notify my company. I booked a room at the Courtyard Marriott downtown, just far enough to stay invisible, but close enough to watch. As I left the house, suitcase in hand like always, Candace barely glanced up from her phone. "Try not to die of boredom in Pittsburgh," she said, eyes still glued to her screen. "I'll manage," I said, kissing her cheek. She recoiled slightly, like even that was too much effort. I circled the neighborhood, parking 2 blocks away with a clear view of the house. 20 minutes later, she stepped out, decked in athletic where I'd never seen before, hair done, makeup flawless, more effort than she'd made for me in years. She drove off in the Audi I gave her for our 10th anniversary. Once I was sure she wouldn't return, I unlocked the front door and got to work. I spent the next 3 hours installing discreet wireless security cameras, one hidden in the bookshelf, one in the bedroom disguised as a charger, another tucked in the hallway smoke detector. Audio recorders in the kitchen and bathroom. Everything connected to a secured app on my phone. Motion activated. Real-time access. Full control. When I finished, I left everything untouched, exactly as I'd found it, and checked into my hotel. That afternoon, I began researching divorce attorneys, forensic accountants, and every line of our prenup. The same prenup my father had insisted on before our wedding, the one I'd once resented him for. Now, it might just save me. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Candace. Hope you landed safe. Miss you. It was the first time she'd said she missed me in months. I stared at the words on my screen, wondering if there had ever been a moment she actually meant them. All good here. Love you, I replied. Her answer came almost instantly. Love you too. Got an early meeting tomorrow, heading to bed. I opened the surveillance app. Candace wasn't in bed. She was in our living room, sipping wine and posing for selfies in lingerie I'd never seen before. Lace and silk and a level of effort she hadn't shown for me in years. Over the next 48 hours, I built my case. I met with a seasoned divorce attorney, the best in the city. Her expression didn't change as I explained the situation. Just a slow, grim nod. She'd seen worse. She'd seen everything. And she knew exactly what to do. I contacted my financial advisor to lock down our assets. I switched the beneficiaries on my policies. I called a locksmith, lined up timelines, checked paperwork. And I watched. I watched as Candace used my travel money to buy new clothes and fancy bottles of wine. I watched her gossip on video calls, laughing with friends about how dull I was. He thinks a crazy night is ordering dessert, she said, howling to someone named Jen. But hey, he pays the bills while I have my fun. She texted multiple men, juggling schedules like she was planning a wedding. Can't do Tuesday, that's Michael. Wednesday works, though. On the third evening, just as I expected, my phone pinged with a motion alert. A man stood at our front door, tall, clean-cut, holding a bottle of champagne. Candace greeted him with a kiss that made my stomach turn. They skipped the pretense, headed straight to drinking my imported whiskey while dragging my name through the dirt. So the husband? He asked. In Pittsburgh, she replied, laughing. Selling equipment to doctors who don't want it. He's gone until Friday. Lucky me, the man said, his hand trailing up her leg. Lucky us, she corrected, guiding it higher. His trips are the only time I can breathe in this marriage. They made their way to the couch, the one I'd researched for weeks and paid extra for because we'll have it for years. And there, they defiled it. I watched in silence, face emotionless, as the live feed continued. But I didn't act. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. At 11:48 p.m., they stumbled upstairs, drunk on my liquor and their own arrogance. They entered our bedroom. The camera caught it all. That's when I learned his name, Robert. Worked for the city. Married. 2 kids. And there he was in my bed, saying things about me I can't unhear. At 2:17 a.m., I left my hotel. I didn't slam doors or stomp upstairs. I moved with purpose, calm, methodical. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water. Steady hands. Steady breath. Then I followed the noise upstairs. As I passed our wedding photo in the hallway, I straightened it, a final gesture of the life I'd believed in. Then I opened the door. Streetlight from the window bathed the room in a dim glow. 2 bodies. Entwined. Oblivious. Until I cleared my throat. Candace screamed. Robert froze mid-thrust, face morphing from ecstasy to panic in an instant. Darren, she shrieked, lunging for the covers. What are you? I raised a hand. Silence. Then turned to Robert. Out of my bed, I said, my voice low and flat. Man, I didn't know, she said. He stumbled, trying to untangle himself. You have 10 seconds, I said. He jumped up, grabbing for his clothes. You won't need those, I said, tossing his pants into the hallway. Just go. Darren, wait, Candace pleaded. Let's talk about this. But there was nothing left to say. Nothing that could explain 12 years of orchestrated betrayal. Robert made a run for it. but I beat him to the door. I caught his arm, spun him, and drove my fist into his jaw. The crack echoed like a gunshot. He reeled. I hit him again. His nose erupted in blood. A third punch to the ribs folded him over in a wheeze. "Stop!" Candace screamed, clinging to the sheets. "You're going to kill him." I wasn't. I was precise, deliberate. Each hit calculated, damage visible enough to hurt, but not to incriminate. Robert collapsed. I grabbed his ankle and dragged him down the hall. His bare body thumped down each stair. Candace followed, sobbing. "This isn't you, Darren. You don't do things like this." She was right. I didn't. Until now. I hauled Robert across our foyer, the marble floor I'd chosen, the one she used to brag about, and threw open the front door. Across the street, Mr. Collins, our early bird neighbor, stood frozen with his morning newspaper halfway to his porch. With one final tug, I flung Robert's bleeding, naked body onto the lawn. He tumbled down the front steps and landed in a pathetic sprawl on the grass. "Next time you sleep with someone's wife," I said coolly, "make sure her husband is actually out of town." Then I shut the door behind him. Candace stood trembling in the entryway, wrapped in our bedsheets like a cloak of shame. "Darren," she whispered, tears trailing down her cheeks. "I can't explain." I didn't respond. I brushed past her and headed to the kitchen. My movements were calm, controlled, mechanical. I started brewing coffee, measured the grounds, poured the water, let it percolate. "There's nothing to explain," I said flatly, my back to her. "You don't understand," she begged, following me. "Our marriage hasn't felt right for years. You're always gone." I was lonely. I turned slowly. Whatever she saw in my face made her take a step back. 12 years, I said, voice barely above a whisper. 12 years I spent building a life with you. Working late. Traveling. Missing holidays and birthdays for you. Because you said you wanted more. A bigger house, nicer things, dream vacations. And all that time, I took out my phone and tapped a save video. Robert's voice filled the kitchen. "So he doesn't suspect anything?" Candace's laugh followed. "The man still thinks I love him. It's almost sad." Her expression shattered. "That was just talk," she gasped. "Stupid talk." I didn't mean it. I pocketed the phone and lifted my mug. "You've got 30 minutes, I said, staring directly into her. "Pack whatever you can carry and get out." "You can't do this," she cried. "This is my home too." "Check the deed," I replied evenly. "The mortgage. All the documents you signed without reading. This stopped being your house a long time ago." "You have no right," she shouted. "I already did it," I said and walked away. Upstairs, she began frantically throwing things into a suitcase. Meanwhile, I got to work. First, I called the locksmith, emergency service. Full lock replacement within the hour. Then, I uploaded the most important surveillance clips, edited to exclude the violence, but retaining all the damning evidence of cheating, lies, and mockery, to a secure cloud account. I drafted an email with a brief message. "This is what Candace Matthews has been doing while her husband traveled for work. No further communication will follow." I sent it to her parents, who always claimed I was like a son, her boss and the HR director at her PR firm, the leadership committee of her church group, and all her closest friends, the ones who used to laugh with her behind my back. By the time she came stumbling downstairs with her overstuffed suitcase, I was calmly typing on my laptop. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, mascara running down her face. "That's not my problem," I replied without looking up. "But you should probably figure it out soon. Your reputation's about to take a serious nosedive." Her phone buzzed. Then again, and again. She looked down at it, her eyes widening as the notifications poured in. What did you do?" she whispered, horrified. "I shared the truth," I said, sipping my coffee. "Something you stopped doing a long time ago." She unlocked her phone. I watched her face morph, from confusion to shock to full-blown panic. "My parents, my boss. How could you?" "How could I?" I asked, finally looking at her. "That's the question you're asking?" Her phone kept vibrating. The messages didn't stop. "You've ruined me," she choked out. "No, Candace," I said coldly. "You did that to yourself. I just made sure people saw who you really are." The doorbell rang. The locksmith was here. I stood up. "Time to go." "Our accounts," Candace blurted out suddenly, her voice shaky. "I need money, at least enough to." "Check your banking app," I said, folding my arms. She did. Her face went pale. "You emptied it," she whispered. "That's illegal." Half that money is mine. Actually, it's not, I said evenly. Remember that financial power of attorney you signed a few years ago? During that meeting you barely paid attention to because you were too busy texting? That document gave me full control over our shared assets in the event of an emergency. I tilted my head slightly and offered the faintest smile. I'd say this qualifies. I'll fight you, she said, voice trembling now. I'll get a lawyer. I'll take everything. With what money? I asked calmly. What reputation? What support system? You spent years turning me into a joke, Candace. Now you get to live with the punchline. The locksmith knocked again. I opened the door and gestured toward the locks. All of them, I said, top to bottom. Candace stood there, clutching her suitcase like it was a life raft, her face frozen in disbelief. She looked like a stranger in the house we once shared, except it wasn't ours anymore. It was mine, and she knew it. For a second, I'll admit, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You'll be served the divorce papers wherever you end up, I told her as I held the door open. Sign them without making trouble. Otherwise, the full, unedited footage, including what happened with your friend Robert, goes public. She didn't respond. Just walked past me slowly, eyes glazed and hollow. On the front lawn, faint stains still marked where Robert had bled hours earlier. She paused there. I did love you once, she said softly, before everything fell apart. I said nothing. I simply closed the door behind her and locked it. Through the window, I watched as she wheeled her suitcase to her car. Her phone kept buzzing in her hand, the screen lighting up nonstop with messages she could no longer control. The next few days were a storm I had already prepared for. First came the financial cleanup. I didn't just empty the joint accounts. I shut down all shared credit cards. I froze her access to our investments. I removed her name as beneficiary from every policy and account. Next came the legal front. My attorney filed for divorce on grounds of infidelity, backed by indisputable evidence. We also requested a temporary restraining order, citing emotional distress and potential for retaliation. The judge granted it without hesitation. Then I went through and scrubbed her from every part of my life. Changed all passwords. Removed her access to cloud storage and email. Swapped security systems. Notified every provider she was no longer authorized. Redirected her mail as return to sender. As for her reputation, I didn't need to lift a finger. The footage I'd already shared did everything for me. Candace's image as a respectable professional crumbled within hours. Her PR firm placed her on immediate unpaid leave while they launched an internal ethics investigation. Her church group, the one that praised her for being a pillar of morality, sent a letter kindly asking her to refrain from attending services until further notice. Her parents weren't even returning her calls. And Robert? Well, Robert had problems of his own. Robert's downfall was swift. The edited footage I released didn't show everything, just enough. His face was clearly visible, and it was obvious where he was and what he was doing. That was all his wife needed. His employer, the city office, didn't waste time either. He was put on administrative leave while they reviewed his conduct. The phrase was polite, the implications weren't. By the end of the week, Robert had moved out of his family home. His wife filed for divorce and requested full custody of their kids. The orbital fracture from my punch required surgery, and with his job suspended, so was his health insurance. I monitored it all, not out of guilt, but to ensure he didn't try to retaliate. Meanwhile, my own life grew quieter. The house, once filled with tension and pretense, now felt still. Empty, yes, but clean, peaceful, in a way I hadn't known for years. I returned to work like nothing had happened. Told my boss the food poisoning cleared up, and I'd been able to take most of my meetings virtually. He was just relieved I hadn't lost the Pittsburgh client. On the 7th day, Candace tried to reach me, first through a burner email, then through a mutual friend's number. Finally, she sent a handwritten letter through a courier service. They all followed the same pattern. An apology, an excuse, a demand. She needed money. She needed her things. She needed me to stop destroying her life. I didn't reply to any of it. On the 10th day, her sister Megan showed up at my door. I'd always liked Megan. She was quieter than Candace, more serious, less performative. She's staying with me, Megan said. She has nowhere else to go. That's kind of you, I replied. Not kindness, obligation. She looked worn out, like someone carrying a burden she hadn't signed up for. She told me everything, Megan continued. Well, her version. I'd like to hear yours. I invited her in, made coffee while she sat at the dining table. Then I showed her just enough of the surveillance footage. Nothing graphic, just the parts that made the truth undeniable. When Robert's voice came on, Megan pushed the phone away. Jesus, she whispered. I knew she was cheating, but this was calculated. Cool. She wasn't even careful about it anymore, I said. I've counted 5 men so far. Megan shook her head slowly. What happens now? Now the courts take over. The prenup handles most of it. She won't get anything. Nothing, she asked, visibly uncomfortable. She has marketable skills, I replied. She'll be fine. Eventually. Just not here. Not after everything. She's talking about contesting the divorce, Megan said. Maybe even suing you. Emotional distress. Pressing charges for what happened to Robert. I was already a step ahead. She can try, I said calmly. It won't work. The evidence is overwhelming. She signed legal documents she never read. And no lawyer will touch her case without an upfront retainer. Money she doesn't have. And Robert? Megan asked. He won't press charges, I said. Not unless he wants the full footage submitted as evidence. Which he doesn't. Megan studied me closely then. She saw what no one else had. The full scope of what I'd done. You planned all this, she said quietly. I protected myself. I corrected her. Something I should have done years ago. At the door, Megan hesitated. For what it's worth. I'm sorry, she said. You deserved better. It was the first apology I'd received from anyone in Candace's orbit. I gave her a nod, and she walked away. The legal process unfolded faster than either of us expected, mostly because Candace had no leverage left. My lawyer wasted no time filing the divorce paperwork, citing adultery as grounds. Between the footage, the texts, and her own recorded words, we had an ironclad case. And the prenup? That sealed it. Candace somehow managed to find a lawyer who agreed to represent her on a contingency basis, betting that he could claw something back from our marital assets. It was a mistake. At our first hearing, my attorney presented the prenuptial agreement, signed and notarized, with a very clear clause. If infidelity could be proven, the guilty party forfeited any financial claim. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for theatrics, examined the paperwork in silence. Then my lawyer queued up the edited footage. There was no need for drama. Just facts. Candace's lawyer tried to mount a defense. Your Honor, he began, my client acknowledges the lapse in judgment, but the emotional distress caused by the release of this private footage. The judge cut him off. Was the distribution of these clips malicious? They were shared with a limited audience, my lawyer replied. Each recipient had a personal or professional relationship to either party. The judge turned to Candace's side. Do you have any evidence of assault you'd like to submit? Her lawyer paused. Not at this time, Your Honor. The alleged victim has not filed a report. The judge raised an eyebrow. I imagine not. Then she turned her attention back to the prenup. This contract is valid and specific. The infidelity clause has been clearly triggered. Unless the respondent can prove otherwise, and I see no indication she can, I intend to enforce the agreement. That's when Candace broke down in open court. He's taken everything from me, she sobbed. My house, my finances, my name, everything. The judge didn't flinch. Mrs. Matthews, she said firmly, this court does not traffic in feelings, only facts. And the facts are, you violated your marital vows not once, but repeatedly. On record, these are the consequences of those decisions. 3 weeks later, we returned to court for the final judgment. Candace looked like a different person. Gone were the expensive designer outfits and flawless makeup. She wore a plain black dress. No jewelry. Her face pale, hollow. Her eyes avoided mine the entire time. Her lawyer had already dropped her, unpaid and uninterested. The judge's ruling was swift and final. The house was mine. The investments were mine. Even the Audi she drove, leased in my name, was to be returned. She was awarded only her personal effects, a modest retirement account that predated our marriage, and a one-time payment of $5,000, a courtesy I'd agreed to, just to make it end faster. When the gavel came down, ending our marriage officially, Candace collapsed into her seat. Her body shook with sobs. Her sister, Megan, came forward and sat beside her, rubbing her back as if to hold together what little was left. I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked out of that courtroom without looking back. In the hallway outside the courtroom, my attorney caught up with me. "Congratulations," she said, offering her hand. "A clean win." I shook it firmly, but without emotion. "Thanks for your help." "You staying in town?" she asked. "After all this?" "I haven't decided," I replied. Part of me wanted a fresh start, somewhere far from these memories. But another part didn't want to surrender my home just because she poisoned it. "For now," I said. She nodded with quiet understanding. "Well, if you need anything, you know where to find me." I stepped out into the spring sunlight. It was warm on my face, and for the first time in a long time, I actually noticed. The air felt different. Not joyful, not free, but lighter, like something had been cut loose. My phone buzzed, an email from my company's travel coordinator. "New client opportunity in Seattle next week. Available." I typed a single word in response, "Yes." Then I walked to my car. Alone, but unbroken. 6 months passed. I was out having dinner with a colleague when I saw him, Robert, sitting alone in a booth across the restaurant. A glass of whiskey in front of him, face half-healed but heavy with regret. He didn't see me until I was already at his table. "Robert," I said calmly. His eyes widened in fear. "Darren." Listen, I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not here for that," I interrupted. "I just want to know how things turned out for you." He glanced down. "About how you'd expect. Divorce. Joint custody. The kids know what happened. New job. Smaller paycheck. Starting over at 43. I nodded. No gloating. No sympathy either. Just truth. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "I didn't know how serious you and Candace still were. She made it sound like you were already done." "That doesn't make it better," I replied. "No," he admitted. "It doesn't." I turned to leave. "Do you know where she is now?" he asked. "Candace." I said. "No. And I don't care." Back at my table, my colleague raised an eyebrow. "Old friend?" she asked. "No," I said, unfolding my napkin. "Just someone I used to know." 2 weeks later, I got a call from Megan. We'd kept in touch, politely but sparingly. "She's moving to Arizona," Megan said without greeting. "Got a job with a small marketing agency." "I see." She asked me to ask if she could have a few pieces of furniture from the house. I closed my eyes for a moment. "No," I said simply. "I told her you'd say that." Megan sighed. "She's different now, Darren." Humbled. Maybe even truly sorry. "I'm glad she's grown," I said, letting the sarcasm show. "But it doesn't change a thing between us." "I know," Megan admitted. "Take care of yourself, Darren." After we hung up, I wandered through the house. My house. I'd replaced nearly everything she picked. New colors, new layout, new atmosphere. The old life had been scrubbed clean. In my study, I opened my laptop and reviewed my calendar. Upcoming travel to Denver, Boston, San Francisco. Big meetings. Bigger clients. Promotions followed. My career had surged since the silence returned. I thought about Candace, rebuilding in Arizona. About Robert, scraping together what was left. About myself, still standing. Did I regret the revenge? No. If anything, I only regretted that it ever became necessary. My email pinged, a message from a real estate agent. She'd found promising properties in Chicago, near my company's headquarters. I began writing back, my fingers steady, my mind clear. Not joy, not yet, but something close. Hope. Sometimes, winning isn't about what you take. It's about surviving what was meant to break you and walking away whole. I hit send. And this time, I was the one leaving town. If this story kept you hooked, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story.